Today I'm going to show you one of the ways that I work with hawthorn flowers on my menu. These are a really beautiful wild spring ingredient that's a total pleasure to forage for and work with. It's a flavour that I actually use in a couple of different ways on my menu, but for today we're going to keep it really simple. And I'm going to take you along with me while we find and collect hawthorn flowers, and then I'll show you a really easy way to infuse their flavour and preserve it in a simple syrup. Then at the end, I'm going to show you how I make quite a simple hawthorn flower and blackcurrant pastille that I serve right at the end of the tasting menu alongside tea and coffee. Hawthorn is a common tree that you'll find in the UK, often along hedgerows or the edge of woods. Historically in the UK, it was also known as May blossom, which gives you a pretty good sense of when it will be that we're going looking for the flowers. It does vary with the weather and the climate a bit, but where I am in the mid to late spring is typically where I'm going out looking for its white and sometimes pink flowers. They've got these beautiful, summery, marshmallowy, vanilla aromas to the flowers. And once you collect a full basket of them, that's a really intoxicating smell and something that I want to preserve as intact as possible when I come to serve it on the menu. In some of my other videos about wild food, I've spoken about how this feels like a really luxurious and rich side to my work. Getting to spend time in nature is really important to me, and it keeps me connected to the seasons. And then I get to share these experiences and flavours with my guests, which is particularly exciting when it's ingredients that aren't super exotic. They're these things like hawthorn, nettles, dandelions that are all around us but have these incredible flavours right under our nose. So on a warm spring day, I'll go out to collect my hawthorn flowers, and the same principles apply when you're working with any wild food. You want to make sure that you don't collect too much from any one area, and make sure that you aren't doing anything to damage the environment that you're working in. Then once I have my basket of hawthorn flowers, there's a couple of different things that I do with them for the menu, but today I'm going to show you probably the very simplest thing, but also probably the best way of preserving their flavour, just by making a simple cold infused syrup. This infusion really couldn't be simpler, and I'll give you the full amounts in the video description, but it's just a case of combining water and sugar and then cold infusing the hawthorn flowers into that syrup. I do quite a lot of these sorts of very simple cold infusions because it's an extremely effective way to capture the flavour of an ingredient without changing or damaging it with heat. And a slow cold infusion can help to capture delicate aromatics, but without drawing out bitter notes or tannins, which is particularly important if you're dealing with something like blossoms or flowers. So I let my hawthorn flowers infuse into this syrup just at room temperature for 24 hours. And then when the syrup is finished and strained, it's imbued with those beautiful, delicate, summer floral, marshmallowy, fresh flavours from the hawthorn flowers. Syrups can then be used for a whole variety of things, so even just at the very simplest end of things, you have sorbets, ice creams, chocolate fillings and cakes. I'll show you now one way that I use this to make simple hawthorn flower and blackcurrant pastilles that I serve at the end of the menu. I'll put all the details of this down in the video description, but to make this I combine my hawthorn infused syrup with a little organic blackcurrant juice and a little bit of elderflower infused verjus. If you wanted to make your own version of this, you don't have to worry too much about the elderflower infused verjus, but it is very simple to make, and it's another beautiful, simple, wild ingredient. All I do for that is take fresh elderflowers when they're in season and steep them in beautiful, vibrant verjus. If you haven't worked with verjus before, it's a beautiful ingredient. It's an acidic grape juice, and it works really well for holding on to that fresh flavour of the elderflower. So now I have my hawthorn infusion, organic blackcurrant juice and that elderflower verjus in a pan, along with just a pinch of citric acid. They get heated up until they hit 100 degrees C, and then I add a little more sugar along with a little yellow pectin. That mixture then continues to gradually heat up until it eventually hits 107 degrees C. Then I whisk in a little tartaric acid, and I need to be ready to work quickly at this point. While it's hot, that mixture gets poured out into moulds to set. Those could be simple rectangular moulds, and you could cut out your pastilles later, or you could use more interesting, unusual shaped moulds depending how you want to serve them. Then lastly, just before they get served, the pastilles get tossed in a sugar mixture to coat them. For this, I make a mixture of white sugar with just a pinch of malic acid and some very finely grated tonka bean, just to give it this nice soft finishing aromatic. Then they get placed on these little pieces of wax paper and go out to the guests just as a tiny little last bite at the very end of the meal. It's such a nice way to end the menu because these are small, delicious and interesting, and they go beautifully alongside the herbal tea that I serve and the vacuum siphon coffee that I make. It's also really nice to be able to end the menu with a little wild food element, which really suits how I approach food and the flow of the whole menu. From it opening with the dandelion petal fruit pastils, and then throughout the menu using lots of different wild flowers, meadowy flavours and flavours like spruce tips from the forest. This definitely isn't the last time you're going to see the hawthorn flowers featured on here, because I have some other interesting things that I do with them that I'm keen to make videos about. But it's such a beautiful and often overlooked ingredient that first of all I wanted to introduce it and show one of the simplest ways that you can work with it. I hope you found the video interesting, and if you have, there's quite a lot of the ways that I work with wild ingredients featured across my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.